On May 27, 1794, a boy was born in Staten Island, New York, named Cornelius Vanderbilt. His parents, Cornelius Sr. and his mother, who were Dutch immigrants, were extremely poor, both working as laborers. After a few years, Cornelius's mother secured a job in agriculture, which slightly improved their income. His father found employment in a steamboat company and became an operator of one of the passenger boats in New York. Although the family's situation had a slight improvement, they were still struggling. At the age of 11, Cornelius dropped out of school and joined the same company where his father worked, the steamboat industry, to contribute to the household expenses. While working in the steamboat industry, Cornelius had different aspirations. He believed that he needed to do something on his own to improve his financial situation, as the wages in the industry were not sufficient for a comfortable life. His mother had saved some money, and Cornelius went to her and asked for a loan of $100. He assured her that he would repay it soon. Initially, his mother hesitated, as they needed the money for their living expenses, but Cornelius persisted. Eventually, his mother agreed and gave him the $100. At that time, $100 was a significant amount for himself, enough to buy a small boat. Cornelius thought to himself, "Why should I work for a steamboat company when I can own a boat and work for myself?" Despite having only completed 5th grade and lacking extensive education, he had a natural business sense. Cornelius quickly realized that if he wanted to succeed in the industry, he had to offer competitive prices to attract customers. He lowered the prices significantly, and customers started flocking to him one after another. When he bought his first boat at the age of 16, he swiftly repaid his mother the $100. From then on, he saved every penny he earned to buy more boats, one after another, expanding his fleet. The number of boats increased progressively. It may be hard to believe, but by the time Cornelius was not yet 18, he owned more than 10 small and large boats, employing 10 people to work for him. When he turned 18, an event occurred that would shape his future. The War of 1812 between America and Britain began, which was part of America's struggle for independence against the British. This war presented an opportunity for Cornelius. The U.S. government entered into a contract with him to transport military supplies across the water to the American side. This work really boosted Cornelius, as he had a lot of boats and they were in high demand, providing good rental income. Therefore, he had enough money to invest in sailing. A year later, at the age of 19, Vanderbilt married his cousin's daughter, a woman named Sophia Johnson, who gave birth to 13 children for Vanderbilt. However, Cornelius did not care about these 13 children and his wife. He never even spent time with them, as he was solely focused on making money. He had become somewhat distant from his children. When we reach the 1820s, Cornelius has a lot of money, but he is not satisfied and wants to go higher. This is also the time when steamboats enter the market. Vanderbilt, upon learning about steamboats, only thinks about buying them because they are faster, less troublesome, and bring in more money. You may ask, what about the previous boats? Well, they were sailboats, and the steamboats were a new arrival. During this period, Cornelius begins to gain fame, but with an inappropriate name as a ruthless trader. What was he doing? He charged high prices. Not only did Vanderbilt bring down the prices so much that other merchants were going bankrupt, but he also said, "I have to crush them. I need to be the only one standing, and I will buy their boats for a bargain." This way, the number of his boats increased. The reason Vanderbilt was able to lower the prices was that he had prepared himself beforehand and planned to bring down the prices for a year. Even if he incurred losses, he wouldn't go bankrupt. His strategy worked perfectly. He bankrupted all the shipping companies except his own. Cornelius enjoyed this situation. He thought of himself as playing chess and capturing the pieces one by one. His only goal was to win the game entirely. Despite being wealthier than many of New York's rich people at the age of 30, they did not acknowledge him. They said, "You are uneducated, your accent is not even New York, and you are uncouth." They would tell him, "You have new money, but we have old and antique money." To this he would reply, "I serve all of you very well." Vanderbilt did not pay attention to these remarks. He would go to his chessboard, sit down, move the pieces, and go higher and higher. We arrive in 1849. And Cornelius Vanderbilt is about 55 years old, a fully accomplished wealthy man, but he is still not satisfied. He says, "I have to build my life." Another opportunity arises for him. Successful people are always opportunistic, not necessarily in a negative sense, but they recognize opportunities early on. They are not indifferent to them. In 1849, Cornelius Vanderbilt becomes acquainted with the gold rush in California. Perhaps you have heard of the gold rush in California. People realized that there was gold in California, and a large portion of the Eastern American population set out for it. They went to California solely to find gold. They arrived and bought a pickaxe and shovel, going to places where they expected to find gold. Interestingly, none of those who went in search of gold profited as much as the sellers of pickaxes and shovels, except for one person, Cornelius Vanderbilt. Why? Because he was also looking for gold, but not the kind of gold ordinary people were seeking. He saw the market's potential and established an institution that transported people from the East Coast of America to the West Coast, specifically California. And don't think it was by land, because the railroad was not yet fully completed at that time, and people found it easier to board Cornelius's boats and travel to California on foot. Maybe you wonder how the Panama Canal, which hadn't been built yet, transported passengers to Nicaragua. They would take another means of transportation to reach the narrow strip of Nicaragua and then make their way to the Pacific Ocean, where they would board a series of Cornelius boats. These boats would carry them to California. Cornelius set sail for gold. It was the largest transportation project in American history. When nearly 500,000 people within a very short period wanted to go to the other side of the country, they would say, "Take the Cornelius boat." Cornelius would say, "I'm not going after gold, I'm bringing the people. They will find it themselves." In 1853, Cornelius was 59 years old. An extremely rare event occurred when Cornelius decided to go on vacation. A man who had worked tirelessly since the age of 11, even working on weekends. When he said he wanted to go on a family vacation, they were surprised and asked, "What does he have in mind? Surely another business venture." But no, he truly wanted to relax. So he purchased one of the best ships of that time and went to Europe with his family. He entrusted his companies to his employees whom he trusted. However, once they saw his absence, they began embezzling. While in Europe, Cornelius discovered what his employees were doing. He didn't get angry at all. He simply took a piece of paper, wrote a few lines with his limited education, and sent it to his employees. He wrote on the paper, "You have committed to deceiving me. I won't file a complaint against you because it would take too long due to the law, but I will ruin you." He signed it and sent it. To reduce his taxes, Vanderbilt had moved his headquarters to Nicaragua. Those who embezzled in his company were all in Nicaragua, despite being Americans. He destabilized Nicaragua to seek revenge against his employees. With his influence over the surrounding countries, Vanderbilt told them not to recognize the government of Nicaragua because it was not a legitimate government. He even provided evidence that confirmed this, which led Nicaragua to gradually descend into instability and even internal conflict. All the employees who had stolen Vanderbilt's money were trapped in the midst of the Civil War. So, the letter that Vanderbilt had written to them with just 4 words became a reality. Many people, when they turn 60, start thinking about retirement. But Vanderbilt was the opposite. He wanted to expand his capital. When Cornelius turned 60, it seemed like his mind became a bit more active. He focused on a newly emerging mode of transportation, the railroad, and interestingly, he realized the revolutionary impact this means of transportation would have. He put all his boats up for sale when they were at their peak value. He would sell the boats at high prices and invest the money in railways. He always wanted to have exclusive ownership of everything and wanted to enter every sector. He wanted to have full control. Vanderbilt launched a railway company and started operating on the railroad tracks. At that time, there were small private companies that had, for example, 2 trains and operated on the railroad tracks. Cornelius caused the same disaster for these trains as he did for the steamboat captains. He lowered the prices so much that they went bankrupt, and he bought their trains for next to nothing. Vanderbilt's railroad empire was on the rise, even though he started his railroad business after the age of 60. However, he made most of his money through the railroad. Cornelius Vanderbilt lived until the age of 82, until 1877. When he passed away, the New York newspapers reported that he had a fortune of $100 million. You might say that it's not much considering that billionaires exist today, but $100 million at that time was equivalent to over $200 billion today. Of course, you cannot say he had as much money as Elon Musk. $100 million at that time was 1/9 of all the money in America. So you can't even compare it to $200 billion. Interestingly, when Vanderbilt died, he had more money than the U.S. Treasury. Vanderbilt had divided his wealth before his death. He had 13 children, but the one he loved the most was William Henry Vanderbilt. That's why he bequeathed 90% of his wealth to William and 10% to the other 12 children. He even wrote in his will that the other 12 children do not deserve this money and he will not help them. He will only bring their destruction. Despite being known as a ruthless businessman, Vanderbilt is recognized as one of the men who built America.